Hello, I'm Conor Meade, and we're here at the Canadian Science Policy with Dr. Rahim Rezaie, lecturer and research associate at the Centre for Global Engineering at the University of Toronto. Dr. Rezaie's experience and research interest is in global health with a specific focus on health technology innovation. So Dr. Rezaie, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So to get us started off, can you tell us a bit about the Centre for Global Engineering? How did you get interested in global health originally?
I got interested in global health as I was doing my studies in life sciences, in biotechnology, molecular biology, and so on. As I grew towards my bachelor's degree and went to my biotechnology degree, did my biotechnology degree, I became more cognizant of the disparity in access to technology between developed and the developing world. And coincidentally, at the same time, I became in touch with Professor Peter Singer, who now runs Grand Challenges Canada. He came and gave a talk at one of the programs where I was doing my master's degree, and he was talking about global health, and it seemed like it resonated with me very well, and I started working with them afterwards, and that one thing led to the other, and I became very interested in it, and I pursued a PhD in global health in a sense. So that's sort of how I became interested in global health. But the basic rationale for me was to apply the knowledge and skills that I had towards development issues, so making technology more accessible for more people. On the Centre for Global Engineering, this is, as you mentioned, it's based at the University of Toronto. It's based at the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering. It has been around since about 2009, and it's headed by Professor Yuling Cheng, who's the director. The objective of this center is to leverage the knowledge and capability of the vast amounts of engineering talent at the University of Toronto towards addressing complex global challenges. So we translate that in two sort of terms. One is through educational aspects. So the Center for Global Engineering offers a number of courses to let students know of what development issues are and how their knowledge and skills can be leveraged against these complex global challenges, like water and sanitation, for example, nutritional issues and agriculture issues and so on, which many people in the developing world suffer from. On the other hand, a major focus of the center is to bring researchers together towards projects, large research projects that can address global challenges. So to give you an example, the center has had grants from the Gates Foundation for about a number of years to reinvent the toilet. The Gates Foundation ran a competition a few years ago, and they were selected one of them. So their challenge is to develop a toilet that is highly efficient, that is off-grid, that produces no waste. The byproducts are actually useful, and that can operate at a very low cost. Okay, this is a very technically challenging area to address, but it's just one example of how they've formed an engineering group that now for a number of years has been working on this challenge. We've replicated the same thing, so we now have a group working on food and nutrition that relates to the developing world. We have a group of researchers working on developing affordable and resilient shelter for people in post-slum communities in places like India, for example, where millions of people continue to live in very poor conditions in slums. We have a number of other projects that students do and a sort of various scale of things, but those are some of the sort of major things that we've undertaken so far.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what do you think are some of the major obstacles to the diffusion of health technology to the developing world?
There are many, to be honest. It is at its core, from an engineering perspective, it is oftentimes the technology itself. The technology itself is often made for us here in Canada, in the United States, in the Western world, broadly speaking. Oftentimes there is very little attention paid to needs of the developing world and what actually that means. So oftentimes there's a mismatch in effect between supply and demand. That mismatch could be just the nature of technology, that is not resilient in the environments, that it is perhaps too complex to use, or that it is just simply too expensive. So I think there's a number of, obviously it's a very complex question, but from a technological perspective, I think that is one of the core challenges. There are other core challenges such as funding and so on, but from a technical perspective, I think this disconnect between supply, the need, and what that need means in terms of affordability and appropriateness of a technology with the demand of technology that has traditionally been from the Western world for a particular audience that are much more affluent in the West.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, very interesting. So what do you think are some of the most important upcoming technological innovations in the space of health technology? And how would you describe or quantify the potential impact that some of these new technologies could have?
Foretelling the future is always a precarious task. But I think, to me, it's not necessarily these leading edge technologies that sometimes people think about. It could be just not something earth-shattering that we haven't invented before. Mm-hmm. It is much more so in scaling up what we know and making technologies that are actually scalable. In places like India, in places like China, where millions and millions of people, in places like Africa, where millions still do not have access to diagnostics, to vaccines, and so on. So if you think about a diagnostic test, for example, that we might do here and may cost tens or hundreds of dollars sometimes, this is virtually inaccessible to the vast majority of the population throughout the globe. To me, the most impactful solutions and innovations will come from those innovations that actually make existing technology, if you like, appropriate for these settings. Mm-hmm. And that means a whole host of things, from a technology perspective and from adapting to the social fabric of places and so on, and better understanding of the needs in the first place. But ultimately, I think those technologies will be impactful that are cognizant of the needs of the vast majority of the global population, mm-hmm. which currently does not reside in the West and is not very affluent.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds to me like many of these issues that you're working on, they have the potential to generate an incredible return on investment in terms of development. What can policymakers do, and what should policymakers do to facilitate that kind of research and to facilitate that kind of development?
Exactly, and I appreciate that you recognize the potential impact of some of these projects. Mm-hmm. Just to sort of give you one proof point, we've recently started a project on food and nutrition security at the Center for Global Engineering. And one of the objectives of this group is to address food waste throughout the globe. It is estimated that approximately 40% of the food produced in the world is wasted, before humans can consume it, for a variety of reasons. But in the developing world, oftentimes this is just a function of infrastructure, poor roads, and the function from the time that the fruit or vegetable is produced until it makes it to the market, oftentimes a good portion of that is wasted. Mm-hmm. So you can translate that into energy that went into producing that becomes in effect wasted. The human energy, the human talent, and the time is wasted, along with that 40%. So it is if we can reduce that even by half, you can imagine the implication for food security in the world, but also in terms of savings in energy and time and so on. Mm-hmm. Okay, so as far as what can policies do to facilitate these things, I think as I mentioned earlier, that if you believe that the impactful innovations include those innovations that adapts new existing technologies towards new settings and to giving access to more people, then we have to adapt to that. Currently, if we look at CIHR, if we look at NSERC, and all these sort of major funding agencies, the vast majority of funding in Canada, for example, and by extension probably in the rest of the developing world, goes into leading edge type of research. So we want our researchers to publish papers, we want our researchers to invest their time and energy into the new thing, right? We do not necessarily support you taking an existing technology and tweaking it for another market. Because on the one hand, the system does not incentivize that, right? You may not be able to publish it, the funder may not fund it because it doesn't sound as earth-shattering as the other one. But nevertheless, that potential intervention is significant and is impactful. I hope that one of the areas where policymakers can adjust is in tweaking these funding mechanisms to allow more for innovations that are not necessarily new to the world type of innovations, but that increase the impact and provide more access for more people to more drugs, vaccines, diagnostics, and so forth.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I just want to ask quickly for everyone else out viewing, if we want to learn more about what we've been talking about today, if we want to learn more about your work, where can we find you online?
You can find us at cgen.utoronto.ca. That's at the Center for Global Engineering. I also would recommend people check out Grand Challenges Canada, which is a very vibrant, dynamic program, which is fairly innovative in this sphere. To learn about what their activities are. I think it's one of the sort of flagship programs that has been somewhat copied throughout the world now, and increasingly is being uptaken. Other people that if are interested in global health can check out the Gates Foundation website, and CSPC is always a great forum and great sort of resource for more broadly science policy related things, including global health.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And once again, thank you for attending CSPC, and thank you for joining us for this interview. It's been an
appreciate
absolute pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Dr. Rezaie.
You're welcome.